Everyone knows about the Holocaust and the Spanish Inquisition and the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, but why can't we Kalimis get in on the fun? To get us ready for Noí, here are my top 5 tragedies that befell the Jews of Iran. Number 5. The Feast of Tachar. In early March 1291, while Persia's Mongol ruler was ill, the Jewish vizier Sad-ad-Dowleh was invited to a sweet party and then murdered in a bloodbath for the ages by resentful Muslims or Mongols. His family members were strangled or killed by being dragged across the city by horses, and the Jewish quarters of Tabriz and Baghdad were savagely ransacked, ending the age of Jewish empowerment in Iran. Isn't this supposed to be a comedic channel? Number 4. This one doesn't have a name, but it was described in an epic poem by Bābāi ben Farhad. In 1729, the Safavid Empire was crumbling, which seems like good news for the Jews, as the Safavids were responsible for my number 1 persecution on this list. But instead, the ensuing anarchy meant that the Jews in Kashan, Isfahan, and Shiraz were forcibly converted to Islam, greatly reducing Jewish populations. After a few months, the Jews brought their way back to Judaism, and the price was so heavy, it's basically why we were extremely poor until the 20th century. Yay for centuries of poverty! I mean, we don't like money anyway, so who cares? Number 3. The entire 1800s. Fine, they took our money, but at least we still lived in every city in Iran. So here's a map of some of the Jewish communities of Iran that were wiped out in this century. In the 1790s, the Jews of Tabriz were accused of blood libel and massacred. That's why you've never met a Tabrizi Jew. In 1839, there was the Al-Ahdad, the famous massacre and forced conversion of the Jews in Mashhad. Not all the Jews were wiped out. Some just became secret Jews for the next 100 years. Others fled to Herat, but they were forced back in 1857 and were the victims of death marches and even a concentration camp. In Bafurush, now Babol, in the 1860s, cholera was attributed to the Jews who were killed and forcibly converted. Survivors went into hiding in the jungle. I love the jungle! Bare necessities, the simple bare necessities. Don't worry about the ineffectual nature of the crumbling Qajar Empire. Even into the 1900s, there were pogroms, forced conversions, and expulsions in all of these cities. And that's why you've probably never met a Jew from any of these places. Isn't this fun? I'm having fun. Number 2. We had blood libels way before it was cool. This most excellent tragedy goes all the way back to 472, while the Talmud was still being written down. After Sasanians forbade all observance of Shabbat and the reading of the Shema Yisrael prayer, the Jews were falsely accused of killing 2 Zoroastrian priests. Jewish sites were destroyed, half of Isfahan's Jews were killed, their children sold into slavery, and many others deported or fled into India, Bahrain, Arabia, and the coastal cities of southern Persia. Zoroastrian-era blood libel. Now that's a hipster calamity if I've ever seen one. Come on, look at this face. Who would want to persecute this face? And my number 1 calamity that befell the Persian Jews. It's called the Anoosi. This is the Big Kahuna, our Spanish Inquisition. From 1656 to 1662, there was a mass conversion, killing, and expulsion of Jews in every major city in Persia. This one's cool because it's extensively documented by Bābāi ben Lotf, Arakel of Tabriz, and several other writers and travelers of the era. This is also when all the ancient synagogues were destroyed and most of our texts that record our traditions and history were thrown in the river. That's what's so special about this calamity. It's still affecting us today. It's why it's so hard to find information about Persian Jews. It's why there are way less of us than there could have been. I could have had so many more cousins. 47 isn't enough! So which calamities did I forget? Put your favorite persecution in the comments. Tani Tatun Kabul Basha.